guys, and welcome back to Itchy Brains. Yep, that's right. Back with another episode. Ragan is not here with me. I don't know what that guy is doing. I remember him telling me that he was working for his finals, and that's great. He's one of the only people that's left that's gonna help me hold our guards high. I'm not going to be the one topping colleges or anything like that. I've never been good with studies, so that's not my expertise at all. So when he says that he has finals and he has to prepare for it, I better leave him some space. Otherwise we're all gonna go down with him. My money's gonna be on him if when it comes to education or any form of schooling. Me, I feel like finals and colleges and high schools, these places don't really feel like that's gonna work out for me. Maybe it's a mindset that I already have. Maybe it's like, oh, this thing is not gonna work out for me. So, eventually, no matter how hard I try, it's not going to, because my mindset beforehand is already negative. Maybe that could be working in hand. But I do know that sometimes I've sat down and tried to study things and it has never really worked out well. So, Bragan, all eyes on you, baby. Tell me how it goes. Anyway, staying on the same topic, today's podcast is going to be very related to what I just talked about. Meaning, it's about colleges and our education system that we have currently in place. So let me tell you the story beforehand before we go into deep discussion about this issue. So it was, I think, last Monday that I realized that I had a shit ton of assignment to do. Some of them had already passed, loads of them. I still haven't done them, actually. And there were some coming in the future. And I realized that there was one due tomorrow, which was a presentation. I haven't done a presentation in the past 7 or 8 months. Been a long while. I did take a public speaking class in the first semester of my freshman year, but then after that, I've done very little presentation, and the last one was, like I said, about 8 months ago. So I realized that I had to prepare some form of PowerPoint talking about whether or not college is for me. And the limit of the presentation was 10 minutes. So I was like, okay, whether or not college is for me. I already had my answer in hand. I just had to expand it a little bit and then visualize it for other classmates to see. The whole presentation was done over Zoom, so everything was online. I don't usually turn my camera on, but for this presentation, I had to. So I sat down around 10 p.m. the night before and then started working on this thing. There's always this cycle where whenever I'm sitting to do something, some kind of work, assignment, maybe I'm sitting down to write my journals or something, there's always something that pops up. Every time I sit in front of my computer, there is always something that I have to do. For instance, I have to throw out my garbage all of a sudden. I have to clean my room. Everything is being cleaned out of nowhere. All of my sudden, my closets are being fixed. All my clothes are situated in the hanger. Everything is where it's supposed to be, except the thing I'm supposed to do, which is that assignment. So I sat down with my thoughts, trying to brainstorm. Also the topic here, whether or not college is for me, I would say that it is one of those topics that I don't mind working on. As a matter of fact, this is the subject that I have done most research on, if anything. If there was some form of field that I had a little bit of knowledge about, I think it was on education. I'm very interested in how education is working out for people, how whether or not the current model of education that we are using is working, even if people think that it is working, how and when does it go on and fail? So that's really interesting, and I didn't mind working on in this thing at all. It was not like one of those presentations where I have to go, oh man, just pulling out words out of my ass and then just filling out the paper. Nothing like that. that's that's a phrase that I learned from one of my friends who has also been on the podcast, Kenny Javier. He hated writing essays, and every time he would sit down and write some essays, like after 3 or 4 lines, he would look at me and go, "Bruh, I can't write anything here. I'm trying to pull a word out of my ass. It's not working." It's a funny phrase, but I've learned it now. Anyways, so I sat down trying to work on this thing, there's a moment when you look at the question and you go, "Oh, I got it," and then the next thing you just sit down and scroll through Instagram. That's almost exactly what happened. I looked at the question and I was like, okay, whether or not college is for me. It was like, okay, 10 minutes presentation, maybe create a little PowerPoint. And I was like, okay, got it. And then next thing, man, I'm scrolling through Instagram. I don't know what it is. When I have the feeling of I got it, I put it off. I don't then sit down and then finish it off because I got it. It's weird. Something definitely needs improvement. Otherwise, I'm not passing the class. Anyways, so I made like 2 or 3 slides and then I slept. Tomorrow is when I have to present, and I've not finished this thing. Matter of fact, I just found out about this thing yesterday, and then I slept on it. Woke up the next day at 8 a.m. And then started working on it. Had some tea. I don't usually drink tea, but then on Tuesday, later on that day, that the tea gave me a headache because I'm not so used to it. Anyways, I woke up. I tried to pull some material from some of the books that I've read that have talked about education, and some of the blog posts that I've read that I've touched on these issues as well. I didn't get a time to look at a lot of the research. So these were my 2 references that I pulled from blog posts and a book. I was done right at the time when I had to present. And I was the first presenter for that class because at the time when I filled out my spot, there was only one left, and it was at the first place. So that's what I had to do. Not complaining. Usually I'm just lazy to do academia stuff. Anyway, so I got done with the presentation right on time when I had to present. And what I did was, I wouldn't say my presentation is compelling or anything like that. I think it's a collage of information related to the topic I wanted to discuss. And I'll be honest, the transition between one topic to the other is not as smooth as I would have liked it to be. But there was one thing that I wanted to avoid doing, which was talking about money when it comes to colleges. So if you guys couldn't already tell, I made my presentation. My thesis was why college was not for me. So I took the second part, not the first one. A lot of my other colleagues, after I presented, were talking about why college was for them. So I was the only one. Later on, once the class was over, I realized that I was the only one talking about why college is not for me. And then all the other people were on board with college. So yeah, so I was saying that one thing that I tried to avoid when talking about colleges was talking about the pricing, because here in US, student loans are a big problem, and it's every time someone presents their topic on colleges, student loans are always mentioned, and everybody knows that that's a problem. Everybody knows that it's just expanding exponentially every year after year, and that was the thing that I wanted to avoid, because I felt like that was an easy trap to fall into. And also because everyone has already talked about it so much, about the debt crisis, about how expensive it is to go to college here in the US. And I wanted to tackle that problem, attack it in a different way from the sole perspective of education itself and where we exactly are we failing with this problem, especially how colleges are dealing with education. So yeah, that's one thing that I try to avoid, and I'm not sure if I did a good enough job of convincing people. Not to say that. Imagine if I had delivered my speech and then the next thing people did was, okay, fine, yeah, college is not for me. Let me get off this call. I don't even need to present. Let me just go off. That would have been funny. People just walking out, just saying bye to the teacher. Anyway, so when it came time to present, what I did was I took out my phone and then started recording everything. Now, just to remind you guys, there were very less elements that were visuals. If you guys want to see some of the text that I wrote for my presentation, I feel like the whole presentation is almost as clear in the form of audio as it were in the form of visual. Yes, there was, a presentation involved. And if you guys want to check that presentation out as I'm discussing, as you'll hear the audio, feel free to do that. It's in the description. I'm not proud of the presentation or anything, but still, it's in the description. You can follow through as I'm talking about slide after slide. I think I give a good enough clue of when I'm moving to the next slide. Suppose if I'm talking about jobs, I'll say something like, I remember saying something like, let's talk about jobs, and then I move on to the next slide. So if you guys want to do that as I'm playing the audio, remember this audio was recorded back on Tuesday. So the voice that you're going to hear is going to be different. The audio so far is clear because I was able to keep it close enough to me. And yeah, saying that, you can access the presentation and then you can follow through. And then now I'll play my presentation of, let's just call it a case against college without the mentioning of pricing or any of that sort by me. Oh, also a little bit of disclaimer. I'm not going to edit any bits of the recording. There are lots of ticks that I use. By ticks, I mean a lot of and a lot of ahs that I do in between my thoughts. I've not edited those out. Usually when I'm recording my podcast, I try to edit those segments out. So in this audio, I'm not trying to edit anything. I'm not trying to modify anything, not trying to make it sound smarter than it actually happened, or make it sound more appealing than how it actually happened. So it's just as it is. This is how I presented for the class, and I'll see you afterwards. Here, a case against colleges by me. So I was editing my presentation during the last minute, so I just got done with it. Let's see. Okay, there we go. All right, how long am I supposed to go for? 10 minutes? 10 minutes. Oh boy, that's gonna.
Y'all have to read the syllabus. Please read the syllabus.
Okay.
If y'all get anything out of the class, please read the syllabus.
All right. So let's get started. So yeah, as the title, Beyond First Semester. So most of the things in the presentation are very personal opinions. So any disagreement is welcomed at the end. Also, I do know that this is not a debate or something, so I can just put anything out there. So yeah. Beyond first semester, making most out of my college experience. So I'm a film making major, right? And one of the things that we do, say while we watch a movie or while we see some kind of creative work,
one of the things that I like doing is summarizing the whole thing in a couple of sentences. Um, that way, it forces us to look at the overall experience and then give a very concise, maybe a very compact, and a lot to decipher from in that one sentence. So looking at the overall experience and then boiling down to like some basic things. I try to do the same for college. Defining college. So this is the question that I still struggle with. What is college for? So I came up with two answers. For me, college boils down to two things: meeting creative people and forming good connection. And then moving on, the case for college. So I wanted to see where people that are fan of colleges say that think that college is for them, where they come from. And then I can maybe go on a case arguing that why colleges are not for me, or are getting obsolete in general. So I guess people join college to see what they know and what they want to know more of. So coming out of high school, we have basically a bunch of skills, maybe small here and there. And then we want to see college is basically a test of, like mentioned, like what we already know, and maybe what we want to get our hands on, and then maybe move on from that. Second, college shows their students their way into the world. Now, what do I mean by that is, basically when we were getting out of high school, maybe we know like some parts of the world, maybe we know a little bit about the economy, maybe we know a little bit about the government, maybe we know a little bit about the election process, maybe we know a little bit about technology and that kind of stuff. But it is very hard for even people that are middle-aged, say that are in their 30s or 40s, it's very hard to connect these dots. Like the government with economy, and the economy with, say, something like technology, or even to like the very basic things. It's very hard to connect these dots. Also, on the same note, I don't think one single person can learn everything about one single part. Say, for instance, the economy. I don't think one person has the capacity to learn all of the economy of the world. It's very hard to do. So, in general, colleges help in some way to kind of connect those dots. And college has knowledgeable professors, some of the best in the field, and they have dedicated their entire life learning or building up a set of skills, and some of them are successful, and then they're just like passing down that knowledge to the students, and then maybe from the students, the students are trying to put their own value into the world, and then maybe like in the future they will then pass it down to other students, or maybe do some kind of creative work and put it out in the world. Now let's go to my case against college. So I think that the teachings done in college doesn't hold up anymore. My understanding so far has been that colleges are a product of the industrial age, and most of the materials that are taught are outdated. There is only so much information packed in 120 hours of teaching or 140 hours of learning. There are only bits, like small bits and pieces that fit together, and then like the whole length-long process of hours of spending just to get like small information here and there I don't think that's relevant. College is the product of industrial revolution, just like the 40-hour work week, and we can see how's that working. And slowly, memorization is getting obsolete day by day. I was reading this book. It was called 100 Ways to Write Better, and then this is where I got the idea from. It said that if you want to write better, learn how to spell certain words. And I go, wow, that's so irrelevant. I don't need to know how to spell certain words, because if I have like a general outline of how a certain word is spelled, Word can help me figure out what the correct spelling is. It will tell me that this spelling is wrong. Here, you have a list of better options that you can choose from, and then I can go, oh, here's the correct spelling. So I think colleges have a similar argument. They basically go, oh, you need to memorize this, or you need to memorize a bunch of things. But I think that is slowly changing. And here's a here's a quote: "The tools for learning are abundant. It's the desire to learn that's scarce." Basically, nowadays, what we have is colleges have never seen a competition. This was a very alien idea when we were in the industrial age, or when we were in the age when even books were scarce. Now, colleges have a competition, and not to mention that they're expensive. Why are colleges expensive? Are there any free colleges out there? Yes, there is. It's called the internet. And then, I've talked about this before. Most of the teachings done in college depends on memorization. And I believe that most of the material that are taught in college are out there on the internet. Internet has made memorization obsolete. What is the capital of this state? What did this during... I don't think the grammar in that is not right. But basically what I tried to say there was, what happened in this piece of time in the history? What is the spelling of this word? These are the materials that are not something that I believe should be learned or should be memorized, or have very little argument as to why someone should memorize them. And if I was being asked this question over and over again in basically a different sorts of classes, right? Nowadays, I'm trying to do this thing where I just go, let me Google that for you if you really want to know the answer. And I'm not sure how okay professors are with that, but Googling something is not wrong. Let's talk about jobs. Colleges are a way to replace curiosity with compliance. And this is, again, like something that the Industrial Revolution has done. Basically, there is a set of skills that the country requires, and the country figure out a way for their workforce to be able to do that job. So college is the gap between the compliance of what is needed from the government or from the classes, and then they're basically turning us, or trying to fill those gaps to make the economy better. One of the ideas that was talked about in this book called 21 Lessons for 21st Century, which is written by this guy called Yuval Noah Harari, he says that students right now forget that they're learning, or colleges, that they're learning for the job market of 2050. We don't know what the job market of 2050 is going to look like. I could tell you things that is going to sound like science fiction, and that is probably false. But if you tell me a scenario where 2050 or 2040 or 2060 doesn't sound like science fiction, that is certainly false. So we're walking on this thin line between, we don't know what's going to happen in 2050. That thing, the future is moving really, really fast. Of course, we have heard it thousands of times. But I certainly forget that the material that I'm learning right now is the skill set that I have to be able to use and make my way into the world of 2050. And again, we don't know how that's going to change. Some people are learning majors like Chinese, Spanish. Some people are learning how to code C++, like all those simple basic languages. But who knows, by 2050, maybe the technology are going to get so good that maybe you can put a piece of AirPods in the ears, and then someone speaking Chinese is basically translated to you from that AirPod so seamlessly. And at that point, people learning Chinese majors, I don't see what their how their jobs are gonna hold up. And this is not something that is far fetched into the future. We have already seen like prototypes, even phones, like they have text to speech conversion already built in, and then people we have heard automation like being so good that someday in the future, maybe computers are able to code by themselves. At that point, we'll still be asking the question, what was the point of that major that I learned in college? What was the point of this major that I'm learning right now? Also, I also put in lawyers. And that's, I think, a hard thing to say. Because for people who don't know how lawyers are in danger, there's this thing called Bitcoin out there, and then possibly in the future it also has the potential to take away the jobs of lawyer, which is a scary thing. But there is this quote that I threw in here that says, "You create wealth by giving society what it wants, but doesn't know how to get it yet," which is absolutely true. I just like the quote, so I threw in there. One of the ideas that I don't like about being in school or being in college, and this is something that I draw when I look at my parents or when I look at my relatives that are older than me, maybe like 2 or 3 decades. One of the things that they don't do is they have killed their desire for learning. They think that learning is something that is supposed to be done by college students or high school students, but not by someone like them. And I don't like that idea. Basically, I want to be able to learn for lifelong, maybe books or something. Always trying to learn something. And I think colleges don't help me do that. Basically, here's the force. Here's the thing where you need to get into when you are younger. And then when you pass that thing, you don't need to learn anymore. You have basically acquired the skill set that you need to fulfill that compliance, and then you're good to go. You don't need to learn anymore. Perhaps the myth that adults can't learn new skills, it's tied to the myth that education requires formal schooling. I believe that there should be a model where I'm allowed to change myself even at 50. Like I said, change is going to be, I think I put that in. So like stability is going to be something that is very, very hard to find in the future in 2050 because things are moving so fast. Some of the things that I'm learning right now, I believe these are going to be very strong biases that I'm going to hold when I turn 50. We have obviously met those kind of people, like maybe our grandparents that are very, very like strong with their biases that they believe. And then we can of course see, grandma, grandpa, that's not true. Here's something that's true. And then they're basically completely reject that idea. In the scenario of the future, like that stability is going to be hard to find. Maybe that's not something that we see now, but as we move forward, I think it will be easier to see, so like a lot of the things that I learned back then are turning obsolete and I need to learn new things. Maybe that can be technology. Right now we see that gap as well from people of old age that basically have a hard time learning new technology. How does my tablet function? And then that scariness does create like a bigger gap between what's needed and what people are afraid to learn. So basically when I say I think I should be allowed to change myself even when I'm at 50, I mean that I should be less scared of robots or maybe some of the VR technology that's coming up to be able to learn those things as they come up. The case for learning, absolutely personal opinion. I think I joined, it's very hard to figure out why I joined college. I think I'm still in the flow where it's like, okay, here are the things that you need to get done before you get old. So I think that was my reason. So basically I put it down as, again, very personal opinion, but I think that I lack the motivation. When I go to high school or when I go to college, the only barrier that I have is the motivation to get up and make my way into class and maybe like do some homeworks and stuff. But basically, once I have built that motivation to go there, which I usually do, um, the teachers are there that have prepared the material for me, and then they're just like feeding that information to me. It takes very little effort for me to see, and for me to hear. Those are the things that are involunteering, and it takes very less effort for me, which is to say, very less motivation for me to do those things. Um, yeah, once you're in the class, the teacher, again, there's a mistake there. Once you're in the class, the teacher takes care of searching and teaching the material to you. If I had the motivation, I'm talking about the scenario where if I had the proper motivation, the best teachers, I believe, the best teachers are on the internet. The best books are out there on the internet. The best peers are out there on the internet. I just need to be able to sit down every day and force myself into learning. And there is a way to do that for free and more efficiently than colleges. I do know that there are places like Khan Academy. Basically, if you have any simple questions, there are places like Reddit, and then you can help get answers that way as well. I'm not a so far Khan Academy. I believe that my peers know what Khan Academy is, but even when we take something like Khan Academy, I don't think they are doing the best job. What if this was a scenario that was chipped on at some blog post that I read, and I really like the idea. It said something like, what if we could put together, I think that if you are the best person in physics, you should be teaching the whole world physics. If you know that much, what if we were able to combine the teachings of the best person that, say, Albert Einstein, if he were to be alive. Right now, there are people like Roger Penrose and those kind of people. But say Albert Einstein. What if we were able to take his knowledge, his education, and then merge it with the best director there is, merge it with the best graphic designer there is, merge it with the best coder there is? What if they created a system that is more interactive and that is more fun to learn with? I think it is only moments before the internet is going to drive college obsolete. Also, not to mention that colleges are getting expensive, so they're slowly dissolving themselves. They're basically creating an incentive where students are kind of having difficulty between choosing college, like this expensive thing, and then maybe something that's a little bit cost effective. And what if there was, and this is going to happen, I think, for people who know what VR is, virtual reality, what if there was a way for someone to create all these learning experiences and then put it into VR? And then when you say, an apple fell and then Newton saw that apple, you're wearing a headset, and then you can see that real thing happening at that current moment. I think we all know the time period when we were very good at maths, right? Something happened until maybe 6th or 7th grade, and then something happened, something went off, you missed maybe 1 or 2 classes, and then after that you were like, well, I didn't understand that thing, and then from there on, you haven't been able to catch what mathematics was. Maybe something that was supposed to be visualized were being taught with maybe 2D designs and things like that. What if that gap was being filled? And I do believe that internet is filling that gap. Is college for me? I still need to Google that. Yeah, this was supposed to be a joke. In conclusion, I would like to hear from people that think college is for them, and maybe a case against the internet, and maybe a case where I can see, okay, so the only thing missing from the internet is maybe those social connections. But other than that, I don't see where any other aspects where internet is like strongly missing a place that is creating less incentive for people to learn. If I'm able to meet those people who are like who can argue against that, and who can maybe do it in like a proper fashion, then I think I'll slowly start to fulfill my purpose, which is again the first slide, which said that my purpose of being in college was meeting creative people and forming good connections. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Alrighty, that's my presentation. That's how I presented it. And like I said, things are not coherent. There isn't a very formal, linear structure as well as I would have liked it to be. So there is that. Now, a couple of things that I didn't get to talk about. And yes, let's address the elephant in the room first of all. The presentation was supposed to be a 10-minute talk with the PowerPoint, including the slides and everything. It was supposed to be a 10-minute talk. I looked at my recording and it said 22 minutes. So I believe I talked for at least 20 minutes, where I was supposed to be 10 minutes. I didn't have any notes pre-prepared. I didn't revise what I was going to say. I just basically prepared my material, and I was like, and by the time I was supposed to revise, it was my turn to present. So I basically didn't have time. Or, well, that's not fair to say. I basically managed everything to be perfectly on time. So in that regards, I forced myself not to have notes or anything, which is bad. So yeah, I went for 20 minutes, surprising for myself as well. I definitely thought that I was going to go shorter. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to mention, but then I didn't have a chance to. So this is something that this idea I didn't get to put it anywhere on the slides. This idea was also talked about by Harari on one of his. I wonder if it was on the podcast or in his book Sapiens. He has his own problem with the education system. Of course, all the smart people have their own form of how colleges can be better. His solution to the problem was, why not create a system where the government says, okay, it's okay that things have not worked out for you when you are 40 years old. Here's some money. Try to retrain yourself and then come back to the market. And then we'll help you figure something out. And this ties to what has happened to the current adults. If we basically look around, I know this is true with my parents. They are afraid of technology. There is a gap between where technology is and them being too afraid to utilize this product. Of course, with time, they slowly develop a habit of maybe using Facebook or something like that. But then still, at the end of the day, even the basic tasks are difficult for them to perform. Now, this idea, in order to minimize this gap, what if there was some form of thought where it was basically like, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how many times you have failed. It doesn't matter what your problem is. If you think that there is some kind of fixation you need with your skill, or if you want to retrain your skill from the get-go, you can do that. Here's some money. Go and train yourself now. There's no judgment involved. And then once you have retrained, maybe you can pay us back the money. And granted, the money is not that expensive. Granted, the money is not that big. And you can do it maybe once every 4 years. When this model of schooling is basically saying that it's basically saying that It's okay if you have not succeeded. It's okay that if you have failed, here's some money, go back to college, or go back to whatever better form of education system that we have, and then take that course, take that classes, and then come back. And then once you come back, maybe you'll like where you are now better. At least the way that I view, and I think Harari is on point. I like to think about the future a lot. I like to think about what the future of education is going to be like. And I would like to see a system in place where if the thing that I'm studying right now doesn't work out, and who knows if it's going to work out or not. Who knows? Because the thing, it's scary. It's a scary school of thought. The thing that I'm choosing right now, I have to do that thing. The decision that I've made when I turned 18 or when I turned 19, basically in your late teenage years, that decision is the work, is the skill set that you're going to acquire and that you're going to follow over and over and over, probably when you turn 60 or 70. So this thing that you choose when you're absolutely young has to be absolutely dear and near to your heart. You cannot make a mistake at all. That's what I think the current model of college is telling me. And being adapted to things. And certainly this model of this school of thought, this model of colleging, this model of schooling doesn't help me retrain when I am 50 or 60 and then I had to reinvent myself. There's no thought like that. It's completely alien. It's the thing that you choose now. It's the thing that you choose when you are a youngster. And there is no forthcoming after that. And that can be scary to a lot of people. And we, like I said, we are seeing that with current adults. And I'm pretty sure in some aspects of life that I deal with, there is going to be a gap that I don't see coming right now. But I'm going to realize when I start to turn older, or when I start to take on a job, say, I'll start to realize things that are very shortcoming. And for that, I need a re-evaluation of my skills, a retraining of my skills. Of course, internet is a wonderful place to do that. Basically, say if you get to your job, let's take an example. If you go to a job and then you realize that you had to work with Excel, whereas in school you were never taught Excel. So what do? Either you have to go back to college, take a couple of classes for Excel, or there is the internet where you can go to some blah 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 website that you have heard an ad of, and then you can learn off of that. I believe on the internet. I believe on the classes that are presented on the internet. They're freaking fantastic. So what Harari says on the book is coming true, but it is coming true in the virtual world rather than the physical world. The second point that I wanted to discuss that I didn't get to discuss was how colleges, how we can fix the problem with colleges, or at least for colleges to realize that they're gonna have to be better in order for them to catch up to the technology, or in order for them to catch up with whatever is happening to the alternative education system. And that idea is that if there was one well-authorized system of qualification, so what that would do is it doesn't matter where you're studying from, right? So it is generally an idea of taking a test, but then when once you pass this test, granted that the test is organized by some qualified people, some smart ass people, and once you take that test, once you passed it, you're qualified to do whatever job you're applying to do. So say you wanted to be an engineer, say you wanted to be a civil engineer, or say you wanted to be a doctor, or say you wanted to be some kind of dentist, which also falls under doctor. It doesn't matter where you have studied from. It doesn't matter where, if you have gone to Harvard or if you just graduated from some local town in Ontario, or if you have taken online classes, or if you have learned from the internet. It doesn't matter where you come from. Here's a test that you have to pass if you want to see whether or not you're qualified for the job. So all these people are going to apply, and once they qualify, it doesn't matter where that schooling came from. Basically, now what's going on is that the degrees have a lot of value, especially the degrees with a big stamp on it, a big, well branded stamp on it. It's just like clothes. If you have Nike clothes, it has a different reputation. If you have some plain T-shirt, it's gonna have a different reputation. But the basics that they both of them cover, the function of both of these T-shirts are the same, but with a logo, it changes everything. And that is certainly true with the degrees that are out there, with the form of credentialing that is out there right now. Basically, the logos matter a lot, whereas they shouldn't. If you are qualified, you should be qualified. If you are not qualified, you shouldn't be qualified. So this one form of testing, I think, is going to fix or start to put like coffin on a lot of colleges and the credentialing system that they use. They will rather start to focus on how to make this skill possible for this student to learn. If we start to compare the results from colleges or alternative form of teaching, if there can be a time where we can compare both of these results and see what's working and what's not working. Again, granted that this test is authorized well enough, granted that this test is agreed upon, and it's not just something that you had to memorize to pass. It has to be a different. It has to be different level of questionnaires, if you will, and the test of skill set should be the one that's more practical in the real world. And once that's done, like I said, it would be very interesting to see people from all over the world can see whether or not they qualify. And if I were to add a little bit to that, let's just put a spectrum on the test. What if there was a spectrum? So you take the test and then you see how well qualified you are. So it's not just straight black and white. It's not just straight yes and no. Let's say there was a spectrum. So say you didn't pass the test well enough, but you're still somewhat qualified. So what then can be done is ask you to take that test again, maybe a month or two later. And even the people who pass the test, it's not that they have passed it and then they're done with it. I think Microsoft is a good example of this. I think they do this with their CEOs and their established companies in different countries. What they do is they keep taking the test. They keep reevaluating these people every year for their employers, even for their big players. They keep taking their test to see whether or not they're qualified every year. And similar can be done for this system or for this school of thought. If that test that anyone from the world can take and see whether or not they're qualified to become a doctor, doesn't matter where they came from. It doesn't matter what they have studied. And once you're qualified, maybe you're allowed to open your own clinic. I don't know. There are loads of possibilities. And the story just doesn't end there. It's not that once you're qualified, just like the police department, you're not going to be tested again. I think that's how the police department goes. Once they see that you're fit enough, once you have passed that fitness, after that, it doesn't matter whether you get fat or whether you eat 6 donuts a day. So it's not like that. With this system, even if you pass, you're gonna have to prove yourself every year, just so your patients or whatever you're working towards, just so you can see that you are qualifying every year or maybe every 6 months, depends on how well you're doing. I thought this was a brilliant idea that I didn't get to share. And yes, I do indeed believe that if there was that level of system for every job there is, maybe not for arts. I cannot see how this can apply to arts, but any form of service, just like engineering or some form of architecturing. If you are providing a service where there are customers involved, I believe there should be a skill level check, just so that the public can verify whether or not you are to be trusted. And that goes with everything, because usually with these jobs there are huge sums of money involved. Once the system is placed, once the logos, big logos, can start to disappear, they shouldn't have mattered in the first place. I believe colleges at the end have to improve themselves with some way. They can't just keep getting away with what they're doing right now, or they're gonna slowly turn obsolete. The third idea that I didn't get to discuss is it ties with the first idea, the one where I said that college is only supposed to train you with one skill set, and once you have been passed with that skill set with a degree, it's very hard to see you being able to carry, say, 2 or 3 interests, right? I know colleges do a major and a minor, but the thing that I'm talking about here is different. Basically, there was this story that I really enjoyed. It's a story between 2 people. I think one of them was philosopher and the other one was student. So basically, the student is very confused. He's very agitated. He's young. He doesn't know how to navigate life well enough. Sounds just like me. And then he comes to the philosopher one day, and then he goes, hey, philosopher, I'm really struggling with what I should do with my life. And the philosopher asked, well, is there anything that you like to do? And then the guy goes, yeah, there are a couple of things that I like to do. One of them is fishing. The other one is playing soccer. And there's one more, to travel. And so the philosopher then asks, well, you have your interests. What's the problem? And then the student goes, well, but I have to choose one. That's how I navigate life, right? I have to choose one, and then that's going to be my skill set. The philosopher then says, no, that is a foolish school of thought. If you like all these things, your life should be about trying to make time for all these things, because these are the things that you like to do the most. So it should be about making and managing time to do all these things. You said fishing, playing soccer, and traveling, right? So your main focus should be on finding the time to do these things, maybe every day, or maybe whenever you feel like it. And that's how you're going to have a life. I can't be certain whether or not you're going to be successful, but at least you'll have a life. And this story really spoke to me. There are a couple of things that are playing here. At least for me, I've certainly struggled with this idea of choosing one thing and doing that over and over again for 60, 70 years. That's a scary thought. And I've always wondered, why does it always has to be one thing? It's scary. What if that one thing doesn't turn out to be one thing? And I did research on this. I basically Googled how many percentage of people are not doing what their degree was meant to be. So in other words, how many people have switched their jobs to completely something else that they don't have a degree in, that they thought that they would be doing, and then they got a degree in that, but then they're now doing completely something else. And I've heard like many stories like that, where people just go, "Oh, I had my degree in this, but I'm not doing that job at all. Basically, I did my degree for nothing." And I was really wondering about this, and I found out that it was something about 40%. I think it was 38.6% of people that change switch their jobs to completely something else. And I thought that was really fascinating. I don't think people realize this, especially us college kids. We think that it's going to be a fixed mindset, but it's going to be very. I think that it's going to be very plastic. It's going to go all over the place. And the one thing that we decide to subside in is, I don't know, we could very possibly be one of those 40% of the people. I really like the story as it resonated with me clearly. Life is about finding time for the things that you already enjoy to do. And when I look at colleges, so I have similar niches as well, just like the student in the story. Sometimes I like to go for fishing. Other times I like to play basketball, which I don't do now. Sometimes I like to sit down and make this podcast. Other times I like to sit down and write. I think it's going to be a luxury to have if I'm able to find a balance in my life that allows me to do all these things in maybe day-to-day time or whenever these things are possible. Yeah, it's certainly going to be a luxury. But colleges, right on the other hand, don't promote that. They ask me to choose one thing that you like to focus on. One thing. Build your craftsmanship in that. Now, like the philosopher says, maybe this school of thought is going to turn you successful, but it's going to be very hard to have a life this way. Or maybe not. Maybe I should have some guests on the podcast that are very happy with what they're doing. I don't know. I don't know. These are just my opinions. These are just my summary of what I've learned so far with the current education system. One thing I would like to say is that feel free to disagree with whatever I put out here right now, whatever I've said on the presentation. Like I said, one of the things that I would have liked to done is for people to have disagreements in the class. I thought there was going to be some form of questionnaires after that, after my presentation, but then that didn't happen. So I am planning to do an episode with Pragyan because I feel like that man is going to have some disagreements, or he's basically going to have his own thoughts. So that would be a fun conversation to have. I'm basically going to force him to listen to this podcast, and then we'll have a discussion on that. Some of the things that I've mentioned, and I do realize that some of the things that I've said are some radical claims based on what I've seen so far in terms of technology. And if any one of you guys that are listening right now, if you disagree with some of the things that I say, and if you want to come to the podcast with in regards to this topic, hit me up and then be like, hey, yeah, I want to be on the podcast. Let's talk about education. It's not a big deal there. I just want to hear from a couple of people, and then maybe we can have a chat on that. Feel free to come up. And then you can tell me some of the things that you are dissatisfied with your education system or wherever you are, or some of the things that you don't agree with what I presented here today. And if there is someone out there that completely disagreed with me, with everything that I've said, I would love to have a discussion with you as well. But before that, there are a couple of things that I wanted to ask to people who have a full disagreement with what I've said here today before they come to the podcast. One is this: where do you think internet plays a role in current model of education? Where do you think internet fits in? Second, what are the shortcomings of college? What are some of the problems that you see with college? And what are some of the problems that you would like to have seen fixed? Is that correct? I think so. And number 3, how can internet complement colleges, or how can colleges complement internet? Those are the 3 things. If you completely disagree with me, and if you want to hop in on the podcast, like I said, it's not a big deal. You can just say, hey, there are some points that I would like to mention on the education system that I think that you have missed out, and then we can have a fun chat about that. Like I said, I'll invite Pragyan to ask him to talk about this issue. That motherfucker is giving an exam. My finals are coming up too. Wow, I should be preparing. But that's it for today's podcast. So, did you guys like it? Did you guys not like it? Are there certain things that I disagree with? Feel free to let me know. My Instagram is @project33. And yeah, that's all the time that I have. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.